Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the Mining Podcast, a show that brings you latest insights, thought leadership, and stories from across the global mining industry. In today's episode, we have Adam Oehlman, who's the CEO of Sierra Nevada Gold, a junior advancing a portfolio of high-impact precious and base metals projects across Nevada in the US and in Saudi Arabia. We're going to discuss Adam's transition from African Gold, where he helped grow the resource base and deliver a successful corporate transaction, to leading a company with more ambitions in the world of fastest emerging mining jurisdictions. We're going to explore why Saudi Arabia has become the company's strategic focus, with the potential of the Safra copper gold project and what it's really like operating on the ground in the kingdom. Adam's also going to share his approach of disciplined capital allocation, balanced technical geology with corporate strategy, and his views on why Saudi Arabia could become one of the mining industry's most attractive destinations for exploration investment sort of over the coming years. Adam, great to have you on the podcast again. How are you doing?
Yeah, great, Rob. Glad to be back.
Good. We probably spoke, it might have been 18 months, 2 years ago, when you were obviously with African Gold, but obviously you've moved on. So for those that didn't listen to that previous episode, just wondered if you can just tell us obviously a little bit about yourself, about your career, how you got into the industry, and how your career has moved and has gone over the last decade or two, to what it is today. So I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. You can probably tell by the accent, I'm an Australian geologist. So I started out with the likes of Northern Star, doing my sort of on-ground time and working my way through the ranks. During my FIFO days, I sort of used that time to get commercial education and did the Masters of Mineral Economics and MBA at Curtin University. And on completion of that, I sort of pivoted into more sort of corporate commercial roles, M&A, working for Oz Minerals up until the BHP buyout. I was at Hancock Prospecting, doing all of the investments outside of iron ore. So both of those roles sort of gave me a great sort of technical and commercial aspect. And then I ultimately rolled all of that skill set into running a junior explorer, which was African Gold, where I sort of signed on at 4 cents, and we ended up finding a great gold resource, selling it to a Montage Gold, and having a nice exit for shareholders on the back of that. So I was building a bit of a theme to my career, and it sort of it all sort of came together at the end. And now I'm back at the helm again with another exciting opportunity, this time in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. As you mentioned, obviously you came out of African Gold after obviously growing the resource and completed obviously the corporate transaction. What drew you to Sierra Nevada Gold, and what lessons have you learned from working with African Gold that you can obviously apply now in this role?
Yeah, I guess it was a combination of the team and the jurisdiction. So Simon Lill as chairman, he's renowned in industry. He's had a long track record of success and delivering great shareholder returns, as well as Brett Butland, the chief technical head at the company. He's ex Citadel Resources. He was the chief geologist finding that Jabal Sayid copper project, which was bought out by Equinox and onto Barrick, one of the large copper gold mines in Saudi at the moment. He's really key to leading this Saudi strategy, and we've got the same team from back in the day. Kept them on board all the way through, and are using them now to sort of extract the value. And then having the success that I did with African Gold, which really came down to emerging market theme in Cote d'Ivoire. I see a similar sort of setup here, where you've got a really supportive government. You have the majors. So in Cote d'Ivoire, you had 8 operating mines and not many resources coming up behind it. So the further developed players want access to better projects coming up through the juniors. And it's similar with Saudi. You've got Hancock, you've got Barrick, Ma'aden's a large gold producer in country. But beneath them, there's really a lack in the junior mining space. And we'll touch on it further, but ease to operate as well. So costs, having accessibility to lots of drill rigs, assays, and at really, really competitive prices. The more money you can get into the ground and the further it goes, the higher the likelihood you have to succeed in my mind. So simplistically, anyway. So yeah, there's some of the real factors like team and geology and country were big drivers for me to get into it.
Um, Obviously, the company has assets in Nevada and Saudi Arabia. Why is Saudi now becoming the main focus? And what does the market need to understand more about the shift with the company?
Yeah, the SNX had done a great job of pulling together a really high quality package of tenements in the US. But for me, the Saudi opportunity is the real step change for valuation. So the US stuff is still highly prospective, but I think the belt scale opportunities and the large resources and the access to ground that we should be able to jag as first movers is really exciting, and I think the market's starting to see that as well.
As Safra is an early stage copper gold project, but there is already obviously a lot of geological interest around it. What are you seeing on the ground that gives you confidence this could be obviously a meaningful system?
Yeah, there's a lot of indicators. We've got 5.5 kilometers of known strike along the system, and we've done extensive rock chipping of the exposed outcrop. We've just finished gravity. There was historic drilling from in the 1960s. The BRGM, the French geologists, they drilled 6 holes. All of them had copper mineralization, with some having really nice gold credits as well. And we've kicked off our 5,000 meter program to follow up that and done the gravity and IP and the rest of the work to really sort of set a new baseline for technical data. And then we're going to work quite aggressively as the sort of pieces come into play and announce a much larger drilling campaign and starting to delineate this really large scale footprint that the deposit is showing us.
This episode is sponsored by Mining International. In today's market, finding the right mining talent isn't easy. Mining International works closely with mining companies to identify and secure senior and technical professionals through a tailored search approach. If you're hiring or exploring your options, you can contact Rob Tyson via the show notes to start a conversation today.
Saudi's getting a lot of attention from explorers, but what is it really like operating there, obviously in practice? If you look at obviously drill rigs, permitting, people, logistics, and access and sort of government support. I wonder if you can comment on all of those kind of areas.
Yeah, no, it's definitely it's been one that's been waiting to be unlocked for a number of years. I think everyone's sort of had an eye on Saudi for a while to see the immense opportunity there. But for me, at least what drew me in was the low exploration costs. So I mentioned earlier that you have all of the big players there. It means you have all the drill contractors and there's good competition. So our RC rates are some of the lowest in the world. You also have diamond drilling readily available. You've got labs, so your assay turnaround times are fast. Field staff, everything you need. Access to projects. There's not a lot of, well, at least where our projects, a lot of really mountainous terrain or anything like you'd be dealing with in South America. So um, all of the real fundamentals to execute exploration are there. And then over the top of that, you have this great government system that's recognised the need to drive exploration within country. So there's a real push. They've set up funds. So every dollar that you spend as a qualified company, you're exposed to a rebate. We just recently spent a couple of $1 million in country and submitted our sort of rebate forms, and we should be getting most of that back within sort of 12 months. So it's you overlay the costs that we're getting with the rebates, and there's nowhere else cheaper to explore. But there is a bit of IP and knowledge that Brett and his team have accumulated over the last couple of decades that it enables us to be able to move really quickly on ground. To put that into perspective, we've had our license at Safra for 7 weeks, and we've got 3 drill rigs completed, almost 5,000 meters of drilling. The majors that are there at the moment aren't able to move that fast.
Great. Obviously, working in Saudi and what they've been doing over the last few years does really sound really exciting. But what are some of the challenges you see moving forward? And obviously being and operating in country, is there sort of any major challenges that you see ahead?
I think from a market understanding piece, it's quite limited. I mean, I when I was at Hancock was involved in the tenement application, so I've been adjacent to Saudi and the industry for a while, but I'm not sure if the market quite understands how appealing, how underexplored the geological terrain is, how easy it is to operate once you're fully compliant and have your business entity set up and have your tenement awarded. So I think on that front, there's a bit of work to be done just to really convey, how big this opportunity is. I think like every, new jurisdiction that you go to, they all have their sort of idiosyncrasies that you need to get used to. And, that's all a part of the process. And that's where I'll lean heavily on Brett's team. But I think certainly from a government and legislative and, ease to operate perspective, the kingdom's done an amazing job at setting up this whole system to accommodate the juniors and new entrants to get in there, drill and find discoveries, because that's what they want. They want resources. They want boots on the ground, local employment, and I think companies like us are the ones to do it.
Junior explorers often spread themselves obviously too thin. How do you decide where to spend your money, and what to stop doing, and also when to simplify the story?
Yeah, I try to keep it pretty simple. I always just focus on value creation. So you've got in a world of finite capital, you can't get too bogged down in sort of technical theory. You want to be making every drill meter count, and that's why I also like having lower exploration costs, because the more meters you get into the ground, the higher likelihood that you are to better define your system, gives you a bit more leeway. So I think really focusing on what matters. You need to have the sausage, but you also need the sizzle as well. So I think a lot of guys either go too far, leading into sort of really technical theoretical stuff and forget the market angle, and then on the work, it's just as bad the other way, where you're just strictly a promoter. So what I like to sort of base all my capital outlays on is strong technical fundamentals, overlaid with an investor mindset.
Your background, you've obviously worked across geology, corporate development, and capital markets. How does that change the way that you assess exploration projects compared to obviously with a purely technical or even purely promotional approach?
Yeah, as I sort of alluded to, I think for me, it really needs to. What I'm interested in is emerging markets with massive opportunities. It really needs to be a big system, a big play, of big interest, and preferably with low operating costs, so you can do it justice. There's a lot of big deposits in North America and Alaska, but you're really capital constrained. You do one 3,000 meters program, you spent $10 million, whereas in Saudi with our rebates, we'll be getting tens of thousands of meters for the same expenditure. So I think it more of that practical outlay. So it's sort of what's the most we can do, value we can deliver with what we have, and throughout my time with that commercial lens, being exposed to studies and the next phase past just pure exploration has been really valuable, and provided another level of insights that you probably wouldn't get as just a strict sort of in the field exploration geologist.
The mining market is rewarding some jurisdictions and ignoring others. How do you think about Saudi from a capital markets perspective over the next few years?
Yeah, it's extremely promising. When I was at African Gold before I arrived, they did a raise, and it was a couple of $1 million with some horrible broker options. And you think now, 3 or 4 years later, you could do that same raise probably at market prices with no broker options and no mandate and all the rest of it, because everyone's so keen to get into the area. And that's where I really see Saudi's got the same recipe of you've got private capital existing, you've got big companies, and then as discoveries come and as market players continue to make discoveries at the bottom end, I think the more regular sort of mums and dads and smaller firms will also sort of see the appeal and start to try and pile in. But there is really limited air exposure from a market perspective that you can get to Saudi, and we're one of them, and we've probably got one of the best listed ground that's actively drilling in the kingdom. So it's extremely exciting.
And lastly, what's the outlook for the sort of next 12 to 18 months for Sierra Nevada Gold?
Yeah, it's going to be a very busy time. So we've got As Safra, our current 5,000 meter program, assays coming in. That drilling will complete very soon, and straight into the back of that, we're going to announce and get cracking with a much larger systematic drill program, which will cover a big portion of the belt. And with the cash that we have at the moment, we'll get a long way into that. So that's one front. We're also looking to grow our exposure in Saudi, so we've got multiple business development targets, from greenfields to more advanced resource, and with that comes ultimate funding pathways. We also have the USA projects; they're not going away, so we're going to look at the commercial outcome with some or all of those, and what's the best sort of value to shareholders with those assets. So yeah, I think it's going to be an extremely busy 12 months, plenty of news flow, plenty of good results, and yeah, exciting times.
Right. Adam, really appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on the podcast again, sharing your story, telling us about your obviously new position with Sierra Nevada Gold, and what you're looking to do in Saudi, and also obviously your assets in the US. If our audience wants to reach out to you, if they've got any questions, find out more about what you're doing, and obviously get news releases of those drill results, how can they go about doing that, and what social media platform channels are you on?
Yeah, LinkedIn's always a good one. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn and responsive, so that's probably the easiest. And the company's got its own LinkedIn page as well. So yeah, that's probably the best place to catch all things Sierra Nevada.
Great. We'll include those in the show notes of companies for easy access. So good luck for the rest of the year. And hopefully you can come on the podcast next year, give us an update, and educate our mining industry in also what's obviously happening in the kingdom at that particular time. So more than welcome to come back on.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate you having us on again.
No worries. Thank you for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode. As always, appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes far and wide. Obviously, Saudi is fast becoming a major mining jurisdiction in the world, and it's great that we have Adam came on and shared his story, and gave us an update on the kingdom and what's happening there. So thank you for listening, and until next time, happy mining.